Right, welcome back everybody to conversation number 90. We are selling magic beans with Tim Stewart. But before we start, I want to thank our sponsors. As always, let's start by thanking the Conductrix who have been with us from the very beginning. Thank you, Matt, Nate, Ezekiel, Ashley, and the entire team at Conductrix so much for supporting the TLC. And we also want to thank all of our TLC newsletter sponsors, starting with Conductrix again, but also Growth Book, AB Smartly, and just started last month last month, SiteSpect. So thank you all so much for all providing your thought leadership to the community. We really, really enjoy it. Ironically, this month's newsletter is going to come out on the first day of the first TLC conference that we are organizing, Experimentation Island, which starts next week. And last but far from least, let's thank our community sponsors, Convert and Blazing Growth. Thank you all so much for everything you do for making this community possible. So announcements and reminders, of course, as I just mentioned, hey, Experimentation Island starts next week. I was going to tell you that today's the last day to get your room. We had 2 rooms available, but we're down to 1 because somebody got one of those 2 rooms yesterday. So we have 1 room left. If somebody happens to live in and around the area and you want that 1 room, this is your chance to get it. That's the bit.ly EI 2025. That gets you $250 off the current price. Learning groups. These are the cohort-based training. Ruben and I have one about to start March 10th. This is the repeat of the award-winning experimentation cultures, process data and stats, psychology and UX. And then Michael Agard is doing his speaker coaching. It's moved to May 1st to accommodate some of his students and allow more people to join them. But he's also agreed to do another presentation with the TLC. And this time it will be about presentation skills. So if you're thinking about it, but you weren't sure what you might get out of the class, April 4th, he will be doing a TLC talk on presentation skills. So you'll get an idea on what it might be like to be one of his students. So I highly encourage you to come to the April 4th TLC talk to learn what that's about. So next, meet Tim. Tim has been in sales and marketing since the mid-90s. Since digital since 1999, back when hits were counted in server logs. From running placements on the world's biggest motorcycle site to A/B testing banners and email subject lines, often in Excel with mixed success. Tim has seen it all. He's also a amazing rapper if you ever get the chance to hear him. I have, it's amazing. He's also a pioneer in experimentation, though he denies it. He was an early hire at Maximizer, rest in peace, and it went independent in 2012, working across vendors, agencies, and industries. These days, he's all about fixing broken processes and bad business decisions, and we all know there are a lot of those to be fixed. As he says, the #1 cause of bad websites is bad decisions. While some call him a legend, he insists he's just a cautionary tale. Welcome, Tim Stewart. Your turn.
Thank you very much. Cool. So can I share the screen on this?
Yes, I hope so.
I haven't got the option.
It's the big green button in the bottom.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't narrow. Okie dokie. So, okay. So, the screen I've got at the moment, the page I've got at the moment, is selling magic beans. So I originally presented this at the conference formerly known as Conversion Hotel in November 2023. And it's a little bit different to my normal subject matter, as I'm more known as a data and conversion optimization specialist, but it was the 10th anniversary. I wanted to do something a little bit different, and it was something that's relevant to everybody. So without further ado, we'll crack on a little bit. So play. But why, on what basis am I talking to you here today? You know, why do I get the right to talk to people about this? Well, I've got my 10-meter swimming badge certificate, and as Kelly said, after 30 years in marketing, 25 years in digital, 16 plus in conversion optimization, I'm an international speaker, and I've won some awards. But really, that's enough about that. I prefer to show rather than tell, so you can make your own mind up about whether this is worth it. So we like to think that what we do in digital marketing is the intersection between kind of creative, artistic thinking and science, data-informed science. But when we meet that interaction with sales, this is generally how we think about it. Now, sales has got a bad rap. And so when we talk about people who are good at sales, we tend to use certain terms. I'll run through a few of them. So we sometimes say that they could sell sand to the Saudis. They could sell ice to the Eskimos. Now, last time I presented this, some people took offense at the term Eskimos. So I'm going to correct this. They could sell ice to the First Nation indigenous people. Please don't cancel me just because it's an idiom. But when I did the line about selling deep fried beige food to the Dutch got it and laughed. And, you know, the idiom's there to prove a point rather than to be too political about it. And nobody seems to object to selling sand to the Saudis. So that in itself is interesting. So I thought I'd rather lean into this and try and cause offense to everybody. So a salesperson could sell maple syrup flavor anything to the Canadians, could sell Russian propaganda to MAGA, and for balance, DEI for the libtards. Now, it was surprisingly hard to get ChatGPT to produce a MAGA image with Russian propaganda. Took several prompt attempts to do that. First time on the DEI one, take of that from what you will. And to be fair, economic isolation to the Brits, that apparently was a very easy sell. So we've got many idioms about somebody who's good at sales. And hopefully I've been equally offensive to everyone now, so I won't get any complaints. But actually, I would say these are examples of bad sales. Those stereotypes don't need more of the thing they have. The salesperson tricking them into something that is ultimately worthless to them is not good sales, but that's what we associate it with. So those are examples of the bad sales. So before we go too far, I want to make a little digression, something to know about me. My brain works a little bit differently. I'm some flavor of neurospicy. My brain has too many tabs open. I'm thinking about too many things at once. I'm introverted, and getting in front of somebody, being the center of attention, telling them how to do things, that gives me major icks. So when I'm speaking at conferences or when I'm attending conferences and they ask for audience participation and they ask people to stand up, that makes my skin crawl. So I'm not in a conference this time, I'm speaking. And better than that, we're on Zoom. So it's a little bit hard to do the audience participation part of this talk, but we're going to try. So I need you to virtually participate for this next bit. So hands up if you dislike being tricked into impromptu surveys. Now, I can't see what you guys are doing, but if you want to mentally put your hand up and show who you're, show that you're part of this, I want you to think about whether these refer to you. So, are you currently in sales? And by sales, I mean in a dedicated sales role, selling product, service, primary function. That's what you do for your day job. And do you find that prospects don't always buy, even when you've established it's a perfect fit? Or are you freelance? Do you sell your own services, even though it's not your primary function of the job? Thanks, Garrett. Do you find that it's a necessary but distraction, a distraction to your main job, and it's frustration. It's frustrating to try and get the sales pitch done. And you get so many leads that seem positive but end up as nothing. Does that sound familiar? If so, you can put your hands down. Anybody on the call who works in a service role or agency side? You have to deal with client service communication, account management, and ultimately client retention. And if you can't organize delivery for that client, it's a risk to the contract. And when that delivery relies upon cooperation from other people, it's harder still. Does that sound familiar? If so, you can put your hand down, or mentally if you're participating that way. Or maybe you're in-house, so you have to deal with politics. You have to deal with shortage of developer resource. You have to argue for places on the roadmap. You have to wait for brand and legal sign-off and negotiate with them. You have to deal with vendor management, getting supply from your suppliers. You've got targets and deadlines that are set, but they're set like none of those factors have anything to do with it. Now, everybody should at this point have their hands down because it's been appropriate to everybody. But just in case, do you or have you ever had human interactions? Have you ever needed another human to do a thing with a mutually satisfactory outcome? Anybody else, I'll deal with later on. So, in summary, you all fit at least one of these scenarios that I've described, so that most of your interactions are persuasion and negotiation in some format. So, we've got 20 minutes or so. If I show you how to deal with those situations, if I tell you how to get better outcomes more easily, more consistently, and to use skills you probably already have, if I can offer you that, will you give me your attention for that amount of time? Because I have a dark secret. I started out in sales, retail sales first, and then telesales, cold call telesales for print advertising, ASCII parents. I've sold advertising, sponsorship, branding, events, websites, banners. I came from the dark side, still to this day, my email address. I sold as a job. I was one of those icky salespeople. But I refer you back to what I said earlier. I'm a neurospicy introvert, and I'm working, or was working, in the #1 environment for alpha type 1 thrusting go-getter types. Absolutely not the place where I would succeed. Except I did. I did very well out of it, despite being the polar opposite of what that salesperson stereotype was. And I did it without the ick. So that really is the talk today. We're talking about selling magic beans, high-minded concept things with sales techniques, but doing sales without the icks. And I would perhaps say it's more about consultative persuasion than sales, because sales is such a loaded word. So we'll start out with a mnemonic, and I don't know who made the word for remembering something by using a pattern so difficult to remember, but hey. So let's work with a way to remember things, important things, easily. Right. It's right there. So the mnemonic, or the right, I would like to start with, and the one which is the main bones of this talk, is pucker mucker. Probe, confirm, match, close. Pucker mucker. Now this is Indian English slang, and pucker means genuine, the real deal, the real McCoy, and mucker means mate, a good person, someone to rely on. Another confession. You've already been pucker muckered. I've already probed you, all of you, one at a time, but hands were involved. I asked, are you in sales, freelance, client service, in-house or similar? Do you recognize the issues I've just discussed affecting the things that happen to you? I probed that. I then confirmed back to you and reframed that. You have these issues, and those interactions require persuasion and negotiation. I then matched. I matched the features to the benefit you would get from them. I said, fundamentally, this talk covers sales skills, which can help you. Make it easier to do things and reuse existing skills. And then I closed. I closed with a summary of what had gone before. You agree that this option I'm giving you has the most gain for the least pain. You agree to give me your attention, to spend your time. And is this all sounding familiar? Because if you work in digital marketing, this should. Because is this you? Do you recognize this problem? we can solve that problem with this feature. Do you want this benefit that results from our solution? If so, click here. If not, read more. That's our bread and butter. We work in digital marketing. We use this structure all the time. So we know the pucker mucker works. This way to remember important things easily is already part of your skill set. It's part of the day job. The problem is we don't use it on our challenges. So good news. It's far easier to do this in person or on internal comms than it is to an audience. It's the ultimate person in personalization because it's one-to-one rather than one-to-many. It's immediate and it's interactive. So let's go more into it. When you probe, you're asking open questions. You want to find out about the problem, get them to open up, and you want to listen, actively listen to what they're saying. So when you probe with those open questions, we mean things such as what, where, when, how high, why, who. These are responses that should prompt more questions. Where is this happening? Which department? Which part of the site? Which part of the audience? When do you see this happening most? Does it slow things down? Does this impact our objectives? You may not need to ask all of them. It's not prescriptive, but it's a way to get people to tell you a little bit more about the situation they're facing, which is stopping them giving you what you need them to give. And remember, we're talking about active listening. When they say something, you're not waiting for your turn to speak next. You're listening to what they say and thinking about how you can help them. It's consultative. If you need clarification, you can ask more questions. And if something is interesting, you ask more questions, because that's how you get to the crux of the matter. So you follow up and you dig deeper. We then confirm. Now, confirming is basically reframing what they've just said to you and then reflecting it back to them. It's a way to understand what they're doing and how they do. So it's hugely important because you can't offer a solution until you've understood the problem. So reframe issues, because they may well be just somebody ranting about something that says, I can't do that because X, Y, Z. You need to bring this back to common elements. And it tends to be time, quality, scope, or volumes of work involved. We're not moving to closed questions until we're ready to move on. But we are narrowing down the discussion from what came out of that probing session into the key points that they want to address and identify. So ways we can do that are, so what you're saying is, you try and frame it as the problem is this, the cause is that, the consequences are. That's interesting. Could we say a common theme about all of these complaints is? Or could I clarify that you would like? Or classically, to summarize. These are all phrases that we can use to get ourselves into that reframing mindset. And we need to be specific. Show we've been listening. Be specific based on what they've said. This impacts you, others, a particular group in this way. And it affects you by how much. Quantify that stuff. Quantify what bad looks like. Repeat it back to them. Confirm you've got the numbers right. Quantify what good looks like. Repeat it back to them. Confirm you've got the numbers right. Ultimately, you're trying to get across to them, this is what I understood. Is it correct? And have them with the chance to correct it or clarify the bits that weren't so clear. Because then we can move on to match. And these are the benefits of the features. So what can you offer? Which problems are you addressing? And if you framed it well, by creating a sentence structure in the previous part, then you're halfway there. And an important thing, which is all right, it's all bold, never match features without the benefits, ever. So the phrase you want to remember to do that, the bridging phrase you want for that is, this is good for you because. You've said you have problem A. Feature X is designed to address problem A, which is good for you because benefit of solving A was one of the things that you confirmed that you wanted from your solution. Simple enough pattern. So then we need to close. We need to ask for an agreement. You give a summary of what you've discovered. You repeat again, recap what has been agreed is the problem, recap what has been the solution you're proposing and the benefits from that, because it primes a yes response. We said this, yes. I said this, yes. You said that, yes. And then when we're asking for agreement, we can deliver that benefit using X. You agree it's a good fit. We have reason to proceed. And this is where we tend to fall down when it comes to internal stuff, because we don't perceive it as a sales relationship, a sales conversation. This is where we fall down. In an industry that obsesses over calls to action and measuring success and next steps, we fail to sell ourselves internally because we don't close. We never ask for what we actually need. We explain the situation, we assume people are going to jump to, and here's what you'll get. It doesn't work like that. So we do need to borrow from those salespeople and use some in their closing techniques. So let's look at some of those. There's the alternative close. Do you want me to start Monday or Tuesday? Simple enough. There's the angle close. If you want to include all the features, you're agreeing to more budget. There's the assumptive close. Great. I'll get that meeting or resource booked in for you. I'll submit it to compliance to be signed off. You've taken the choice away from them. You're moving to the next step. The now or never close. If you agree today, I'll still have capacity to get that working. If you wait, it may mean delays because something else will be on my plate. Regular conversation we have, but that actually is a closing technique. And then the no obligation trial close. We can try this approach at no cost or effort from you. Let us show you this approach is effective before we do the full version of it. Sort of discussion we have about MVPs. And this should be sounding familiar, because do you want it in red or blue? Do you want to go for the starter, pro, or enterprise package? Do you want to pay to get more benefits and pay less and get fewer? Scarcity, time sensitivity, free trial or demo. These closing techniques, we know these work. We know it because we test this. We've got data on this. But when it comes to what we need for us, with the people we deal with to get our jobs done, we don't close. That's where it falls over. So, famously, we should always be testing. Am I now saying we should always be closing? The ABC of persuasion? Maybe, because we don't want the ick. That repeated close attempt to get a sale without being more consultative about it is what turns people off about salespeople. It's what brings in that uncanny valleyness about sales pros. I would like you to always be a pucker mucker, always be a good mate. So it's just that simple. We just need to think in a more sales-minded thing with our internal conversations, and we'll get the resources we want. We'll get the deadlines we want. We'll get the vendors we buy from to do what they told us they would do. Is it that simple? Just close, ask for what you need, and everything is fixed? Yeah, sometimes it is, but you get objections. Yeah, but I need to check solution X actually does solve problem A. That covers problem A, but what about problem B? Actually, I need to look at C too. Deflection happens all the time. I can't decide right now. I don't have the budget or the capacity to do what you asked me to do. I don't have the authority to do what you've asked me to do. Something, whatever. But actually, again, use the sales mindset. Objections are cool beans because we try to close and we get objections. So when we fail to sell, actually, no. They've evaded the persuade? Maybe not. Objections are a buying signal. We reframed it in the confirm section. Let's reframe this objection. They're saying, I get this, it could work. I'm still here having a conversation. I need reassurance. Something about what you're proposing doesn't quite work for me. So objections are a buying signal, but really what they're giving you is another problem that needs a solution for them to buy or commit to what you're asking. Now, remember, pop quiz, we've just done it. How do we deal with problems? We pucker mucker all those things. If we probe and we get an objection, when we go to close, we go back to probe what that problem is. And when we go to probe and they say, was that the problem? And they go, no, we go back to probe. And if we get it and we understand the problem more clearly this time, we can carry on to match and to try a close again. And ultimately, we'll go to the next step. So let's look at those common objections, because there is a pattern to those too. Time budget commitment, probably the one that hits most of us most of the time, because we tend to be working in partnership with other departments. And this is the one where their spend of time or effort is the trickiest to get negotiated. I need time to think it over. This tends to be more agency side or vendor side, but you can find that with individual stakeholders within other departments. And this one's a big one, but it's hard to spot as an objection, but it really is an objection. And it's the objection by inaction. They don't do what they said they would do. They said they would, and they don't move it forward. So let's look at those. How do we get around them? Common objection, price, or in our case, time. But they're really saying, we want it, but we can't justify the objection. This is actually a really strong buying signal. What they're saying is they will negotiate on the cost, but they like the outcome. They understand the end goal. They just can't find a way to make it fit. That's different. They might also be saying that they understand the outcome, but they need more to convince them. They're not sure about the value prop. And it might be saying that they can't afford everything. Some of this fits. So they've got a fixed budget that can't be negotiated, but they might be willing to negotiate on scope or time. But ultimately, what they're saying with a price objection or a time objection is they like it. The idea is sold, but we're just now negotiating over terms. Now, that's a different problem to solve, and you can repeat the pucka-mucka process to understand what those limitations are. Price is not insurmountable. You've sold the idea correctly. A more common one is deflection. Decide later. Totally understandable. I'm asking quite a lot. You need time to think it through. Can I ask today, though, what concerns you the most? Do you think X is harder to solve than I've understood? So try and loop it back to your confirming in your matching process. Did you misunderstand how much of a deal it is for them, for the part you've identified? What else could I consider? Again, it's repeating that loop. It's okay, there's something else there that's not helping us go forward. What else could I put into this? What could I do today that would make you commit to this? Because you're kind of getting an answer there. If there's nothing you could do, you may need to see if it fits at all. If it's the today part, there's a genuine time pressure. Try and nail down when that commitment could be made, when that difference could be made. I can't tell you until after the meeting on Monday. Great, can we reconvene on Tuesday? So that's what we're doing. I appreciate you think X is insufficient. Which parts of this need to be better, faster, stronger, different to make you comfortable with this? And the common objection, which we don't recognize as an objection, is inaction. And this comes out more if we pucka-mucka only once. We only sell, if that's what we're doing, or only persuade once and assume the job is done. But as we know, the job's not done on one sale and you walk away. So we don't pucka-mucka only once. We try to be consultative every time. Every contact is a new chance to sell, persuade. So that follow-up email should also be pucka-mucka structured. That call you have for the progress call should also be pucka-mucka structured. If you've moved past the I agree to do the thing, you should now be pucka-mucking the why aren't you doing it fast enough thing. And it may seem infuriating, but the same technique works for what's blocking you now. Before we were asking about blocking a decision, now we're talking about blocking an action. But that same loop can be used, and it may be something you can help with, or it may be something you can adjust your scope to, or it may be something else. But you need to pucka-mucka it. So every call and every email, pucka-mucka it. How do you think it's going? You say it's okay, but this is a problem still. You're not moving fast enough. Gently hint. We could address this by. So you're trying to match a solution to the problem. And that results in this benefit. You're trying to sell the idea of moving faster and not being a blocker. Would that work for you? And again, we've got to close. And if they go, no, circle back round. Well, I need this to happen. So what would make it work for you? What didn't I understand? Start your probe and confirm pattern again. If it does, you've got to close. You can move forward. Right, I'll get that done for you on Tuesday. Then shall we proceed? So don't think about it as sales, one and done, walk away. That's a salesperson thing. Think about it being consultative in every contact you've got with people. We pucka-mucka, use that probing, matching, confirm, close technique throughout. Pucka-mucka, all the things. Now, that is 10 years worth of sales training chucked into 25 minutes worth of PowerPoint. So it is a lot to absorb, okay? And I'm not expecting you to come out of this as pro salespeople. I just said this is not for sales. This is about persuasion architecture. This is about helping you do your day job for the things you do day to day. And importantly, because we're not relying upon this to make money, part of the people who put their hands up for the true sales role, we do not have to freestyle this. We can do research. So if we have hit a blocker or we have found our price is wrong for the time it will take for somebody to commit to a development project or something, we can find out what could be done, to make that better. We can plan. We can go back to them with a new product, again, air commas, in terms of how you'd approach that. Because if they haven't bought the first one, come up with one that fits better. And we can war game scenarios. If they do this, we can do that. That works better with your vendors and relationships, maybe your internal departments, but we don't have to go into this cold. If we treat it like a sales negotiation rather than just, I emailed him, they didn't do the job for me, what do I do next? We'd actually approach it like we're trying to get a solution. Then we can work forward. And we can do this, and important for the neurospicy people who like to plan, in advance. And I'm not going to teach you all of them because I don't know all of them. And also not all of them are appropriate. But there are thousands of sales and persuasion techniques. You probably use them or measure them or hear them in your day job every single day. And probably already using a lot of them. Just you maybe haven't put the same label on them that a salesperson would. So actually, a lot of this skill set I'm talking about is not something you'd need to learn from scratch or need to go research or buy a book about. It's actually something you'll do day to day. You just don't use that same technique that you would for creating a landing page or creating a marketing campaign on your internal people. And you still need to sell hearts and minds internally to get things to happen as much as you need to sell hearts and minds externally to get people to buy. So after having encouraged you to just use skills you've got already, I'm going to leave you with one final way to remember important things easily. Proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. Or not quite as catchy. But it is a simple and effective structure. So write this one to your memory. Remember this bit. Pucker, mucker. Probe, confirm, match, close. Establish what the problem is, confirm back to them you've understood it properly, match your solution, match the benefits of that solution, and then close. And if it doesn't work, loop it again until you understand why you're not getting what you need from them. It's a mutually satisfactory outcome you're searching for. You know what you need. They can't provide what you need. Find out why. And to make it more effective, plan it in advance. Other way to make it more effective? Other things that will improve the effectiveness of this structure? Well, do some research. So ask some questions in the Q&A session. Do some of your own research. If this whole concept of actually using sales techniques for internal conversations has sparked your interest, go read something and find something that fits your style of delivery and your needs. And we can look at things like closing techniques. That'd be something to Google for. Negotiate to win, want, intend, need. Go in planning what you must have, what you should have, what you could have, and set your barriers and then work your way through those. And that tends to be a best way to get a win-win scenario in terms of both parties getting their part. There are multiple books and websites about objection handling, and whether you want to go the tricky salesperson route in terms of the words you can use and the psychology, or just read the sort of common objections that come up. Practice open questions and active listening. Now, this one doesn't have to be involved with any objective in mind. Beyond doing this, it helps with relationships. When you're speaking to humans, listen to what they have to say, understand and empathize, and then come back to them to show that you've understood with a question that shows you've been listening. I know that shouldn't need explaining, but, neurospicy people, we perhaps need an instruction book sometimes. Have a look at feature and benefit pairs. So many people sell their external product with feature lists and wonder why they don't convert, and we help them with that. Have a look at some of your own internal comms and think about how many things you said where you're going to go, I'm going to do this, this, this. Did you tell them why it was good for them? How it fixed the problem that you've learned about from the probing session? Probably not. You probably just went, feature list, feature list, feature list, budget, please. And they went, And if you are face-to-face and you struggle with this stuff, you can read about mirroring and affinity, trying to match people's communication styles. And much as we do on data side of things, you can look at storytelling. Try and find something that resonates with the audience you're trying to work with, as I have tried to do today. So, thank you for your attention. There we go.
Awesome as always. What are you showing, Matt? Thank you, Tim. Fantastic job. Does anybody have questions that you want to ask? What is that? Matt is showing the a gross GIF. Is it just operation? They're showing
Are,
funny GIFs
are,
in the
are
TLC
you
slide.
telling me you've never seen $6 Million Man, the intro?
Oh, I'm not as old
Better,
as you.
faster, stronger? Like that was just echoing Tim. But now that we have to
Better,
describe
faster,
it,
stronger.
it's lame.
That's true. That's true.
Yes, Steve Austin. I had that. I had that toy as a kid, and that was kind of the angle I was going for. So yeah,
Better, faster.
I'm also Matt's age, so I got that cultural reference.
Ah,
Unlike you youngsters.
yes, Garrett.
Thanks for the great talk, Tim. I'm just wondering, so for benefits, so especially for selling internally, sometimes there are things to do where the benefits might not be as, let's say, have a high delta for the teams, that they might not feel like, well, this helps me specifically in my work, but it might be something like in my position where there's something that's better on the company level, some regulation they should be following or something. I don't know if there's anything you have advice around that area to try and maybe extract some gem or something that makes something a little bit shinier. But yeah, sometimes things, the selling value, what it will give them might not be as, let's say, tangible.
So I mean, this would be a good example actually. So it's a good question. So yeah, to a degree, if you're trying to get somebody to be compliant or do something that doesn't necessarily benefit them directly, it's almost like you're selling a benefit of the company to them. So they don't get it, doesn't resonate with them because it's what's in it for me. So that's where your pucka-mucka routine will come in. So sometimes you have to play a bit tactically. So yes, they may not want to be compliant because I've got a million other things to do. I don't really get punished if I don't. Okay, well, I would need you to do this. What is currently a pain in, for example, the compliance process that makes it so painful? Like try and establish why they wouldn't be, or try and establish what to them would be a benefit, the personal, because we're talking about humans here, apart from the people who didn't put their hands down at the end. So there's always a motivation, and on a personal level, try and understand what their personal motivation and personal benefit would be, because that is then your leverage to then go, in exchange for me doing this thing for you, do you mind helping me with the thing which is a benefit to the company, which tangentially is also a benefit to you because company continues, you keep getting employed. But that's kind of what you need to do. I agree. Quite often people don't kind of look for the collective good. They may have it in their job title. They may have it in their company policy. It may be something that they are legally required to do as part of their contract. But if they don't resonate with it, they'll do everything in their power to not bloody do it because what's in it for me? So it is about using that same technique on a micro level to get your macro conversion. So if you need compliance or you need people to play the game or use the process properly, you may have to do some smaller piece selling where you kind of speak to them about their personal motivations and their personal blockers and understand why they're not willing to contribute to the whole. And then if you can fix that, you've got a fair exchange again. It ends up being that mutual satisfaction. It's like you can make a bit more effort on your side, and I'm going to be easing the paths a bit more on your side. And that's coming back to the same mechanism, just you may have to stack 10 of those up because you've got 10 holdbacks in a team of 20. This happens all the time with things like change management. You need to find an advocate, and then you need to take down the detractors. And you have to sell the idea that detracting is negative to you personally, and being positive is positive to you personally. But what that looks like for each person, you have to find out. How do you find out? You probe and you confirm back to them that you've understood it, and then you match a way to do that, and then you close them to get an agreement. So the same mechanism works at both tiny level all the way up to company level. But I'd agree that one of the frustrations is people don't always think logically. And so you kind of have to dig down and find out how they're working emotionally. And those open questions, that conversation, and it may just be like over coffee and donuts because it's not a formal thing. You can understand that really they're under immense pressure from their line manager who's told them to their face that they're not to do what you're asking them to do. And they dare not risk their job by disobeying their manager. And you don't have the same power to sack them that the manager does. Okay, well, that's a different problem to solve, and it may involve more people. But ultimately, that's what you're trying to get past in the blocker so that the global whole can benefit from this problem getting fixed. But you have to sell the idea of sharing that information to the person who's got the information that they're holding back from. So you have to, the process of asking somebody to commit to something either gets them to commit or tell you why they won't. And if they tell you why they won't, investigate the why and just keep looping until you've got an understanding and either have a solution or you yourself understand it's not solvable, in which case you need to go back to the business and go, doesn't matter what we do, we don't have the equipment, the pieces, the people to make that work. We need to come up with a new plan. But it still ends up being a go forward situation rather than a blocker. I don't know if that helps. It's not easy, but it's that same approach can still be useful, even if it's not solving the whole problem in one lump.
That's perfect. Thanks.
Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, like Corey said, a lot of compliance stuff. People think it's very much comes under not my problem. Like it's for those cultural reference, Douglas Adam. Like if it's an SEP, if it's somebody else's problem, it becomes invisible. And so part of the challenge is making it visible enough for them to care. Some of that may be a stick and pain, but let's try and start with the negotiation style first.
Yep. As you all are thinking, I will talk about what we have coming up other than, next week, conference known as Experimentation Island, February 26th, 27th, 28th. Then March 14th, we have Joey Kant talking about hidden hazards and client-side experimentation. Then we have our own Georgiana. When we had the whole TikTok ban that in the US and then it got flipped back, she did a bunch of research and she's going to do a talk about what it can teach us about digital experimentation. And then, as I told you, Michael Agard will be here on April 4th, teaching us about how to overcome stage fright. And then Tim Wilson will be here to talk about his book, Analytics the Right Way. So that is on April 25th. And Matt has shared the $6 Million Man intro there. All right. Thank you, Tim. I don't see any other questions, but if you'll monitor the TLC calls channel, folks will have an opportunity to ask the questions and I will upload the recording and go finish packing my bag for Georgia.
Experimentation Island.
That's right. And for anybody who is going to Experimentation Island, there is a channel, EI 2025. You can hop into that channel. It is now open to the public to make it easier for everybody to find. And also anybody who's arriving Tuesday to stay in the airport in Jacksonville, there's a group that's planning a dinner. So go over there and join the channel so that you can join the dinner. All right. Thanks all. Thanks, Tim. Great talk as always. Appreciate all of you. Have a great weekend.